I will begin with a official roll call of our committee members for the record. Dr. Rita Ali, our City Council representative. Andre Allen, our at-large and chairman here. Chief Boone. Solandra Birch, our at-large member. Terry Burnside, at-large member. Allison Galvin, our under 25 representative.
Present.
Nina Gugis, our NAACP representative.
Present.
Nikolai Graves, our 5th district representative. Miss Lorene King, our 3rd district representative.
Present.
Miss Sharon Kramer, our 2nd district representative.
Present.
Miss Megan Nguyen, our under 25 representative.
Present.
Mr. Tyson Pastor Parks, our at-large representative. Chief Doug Theobald, our representative from the Peoria Police Department. Chief, you're muted.
There we go. Off screen. Here.
All right, thank you, Chief. Karen J. Wilson, our 1st district representative.
Present.
And Dr. Zanis Zagardo, our at-large representative and vice chair.
Here.
Awesome. So we have quorum of our committee members, so thank you. Now I want to go ahead and I'm going to read the governor's executive order, so please bear with me. Governor J.B. Pritzker's executive order 2021-01 as amended and extended limits meetings to lesser of 25 persons or 25% of the overall room capacity. Governor J.B. Pritzker's executive order 2020-07 as amended and extended requires that public bodies take steps to provide video, audio, and other telephonic access to meetings. The CDC recommends social distancing of at least 6 feet between persons. To comply with these recommendations and requirements, the Advisory Committee on Police and Community Relations is implementing the following for the virtual town hall meeting on February 4th, 2020, while complying with the spirit of the Open Meetings Act. All right, so we are now official and ready to go. So first off, thank you for everyone for attending our 2nd round of virtual town hall meetings. The purpose of these meetings is to engage with our community on the topic of police and community relations in order for us to work towards building improved relations between our police department and our community that we think is very important. I see we do have one guest with us today, and so I would like him to have the opportunity to just introduce himself and maybe say why he is here today. So Zach, I know you did reach out to me. I appreciate your interest, and I'm going to go ahead and just give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, sir.
Well, thank you. My name is Zach Kraler. I moved to Peoria like 5 years ago and worked at Caterpillar. Over the past year, I've become a lot more interested in policing in the States, and probably that's been a long process in the making. And I decided I wanted to reach out and see what this board was doing and what was actually going on in Peoria to improve police community relations. After going to a protest last summer, I was pretty clear that there were a lot of people that were upset about the way policing was going on in Peoria. So I wanted to see if there was anything to do with that.
Thank you, Zach. I appreciate your interest in this. And so if you don't mind, I'll just kind of give you a basic overview of our committee really fast since you're new to the area. But we are a committee that is through the city of Peoria where citizens can come and voice their concerns after they've gone through the formal process, the formal grievance process through the Peoria Police Department. So they will go through that formal process through professional standards. And then from there, if they are not satisfied with the decision that is rendered, they can come to our advisory committee and we can review that and make a non-binding recommendation to the chief of police after we review the findings. And so that is our purpose based off the ordinance that created us. But we've created these virtual town hall meetings because we want to work on getting raw data and good feedback from our committee, our community. And so that's the purpose of why we created these town hall meetings. We normally meet, I believe it's the third Tuesday of, the third Thursday of each month. But we wanted to add these just to have another opportunity to engage with our citizens of Peoria. So at this time, Zach, is there anything specific that you would like to address the advisory committee with, sir?
Do you guys have any say in who gets picked as the next police chief? Sorry about that. My daughter's in the background here.
Hey, I get it, man. I get it. Hashtag dad life. I will say that the advisory committee, well, actually, you know what? Let me yield to Chief Theobald. Maybe he can provide an update of just how the search is going. Maybe the parties that will be involved in the search. I think he could provide some better context. So go ahead, Chief.
Yeah, thanks, Andre. I'll try. Since the city manager has most responsibility in that, and then obviously the firm or agency that they have selected to do the review. I do know that it has been posted, and so it actually is in motion now. And I haven't taken in every meeting, but I will say the ones that I've had a place at the table at, I do know that they are reaching out to, or are going to, I should say, maybe they haven't yet, but they're going to be reaching out to several different community members, groups, perhaps committees, either individually or as a whole, to help with the selection process as they move through it. So it's selecting a police chief takes time. It's not like something you see in a normal job interview where it's a one-time thing. There's a whole process involved in it, and there's some timelines involved in this particular case. But I think that would be directed through either a committee under the supervision of the city manager, or perhaps maybe council, in reference to who is going to advise and contribute to the selection process. Ultimately, the city manager does the hiring for department heads.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. Just for the record, I see that Ms. Solandra Birch, at-large member, has signed on to the meeting. If you could just confirm that is you for the record, Ms. Birch.
Yes, that's Shalandra. Sorry, I had to put some people down.
You had to put some people down, Solandra?
I had to put my kids in bed. Sorry about that.
Hey, okay. You got, we don't want things to be misinterpreted. I don't know what you're doing. No, I was playing with you. No, but thank you for being with us today. I definitely understand that. We're all trying to balance multiple things, so thank you. And so to kind of piggyback off what Chief Theobald said, they are reaching out to multiple community members. I know that the search did reach out to me as chairman, and I'm not sure if they reached out to anyone else on the committee just to provide some feedback on what did I feel were some admirable qualities of our next police chief, and some things that I was excited, to see in the next police chief, and some of the things that I felt, that our city needed as well too. So they definitely are doing their due diligence there. And one of the topics I actually have on our agenda for next week as a committee is for us to provide some feedback as well too. And I would like us to compile those notes, and then we would provide that to the city manager. And so that actually is going to be an agenda item for us to work on at our committee meeting next Thursday.
Cool, that's some helpful background.
Yeah, no
I can
problem.
give my 2 cents on who the police chief should be. I think if we keep hiring police chiefs who've always been in policing, we're going to keep having the same problems we've always had with policing. So we probably need to expand our search beyond people who have either already been police chief or always been police officers. Does need to be able to build a relationship with their officers and have respect there, but I don't think we need to limit ourselves to police chiefs and, you know, moving someone from a small town to a big town or whatever kind of thing in our search. I think it's more of a leadership position, so we should be hiring someone who's more of a leader than a just run of the mill, or than someone who's just worked their way up through the organization as a police officer. So
Yeah, no, thank you for your feedback. Is there any specific qualities that you would say that you're looking for? I know you said that you think that it should be someone maybe outside of the realm of law enforcement, which is a unique opinion. Is there any other like qualities or attributes that you think the next police chief should have, sir?
I think they should be good at building consensus. They need to be able to set direction for the police department. And I think they need to have a vision for what they want to see policing look like, for what, for where the department should go. That we don't just need someone who's going to come in and say, yep, we're going to keep doing things the way we've been. That's going to be fine. So that would be someone who's honest, has integrity, and probably who's well-spoken, because there's a lot of need for the police chief to interact well with the community at public forums and be able to handle that. So
Awesome.
that's been including that.
No, thank you. One thing that I did omit and I will take responsibility for was the reading of the ground rules for our town hall series. And so I do want to go over those real fast, just so that they are on the record. And the ground rules are, if you are comfortable, please name yourself. This is optional, but please also identify yourself each time you comment for the record. Mute your microphone when you're not speaking. Each citizen will have up to 5 minutes to speak each time they raise their hand using the reaction icon on Zoom, which is this guy right here. Our vice chair, Dr. Zagardo, will manage the time allotment to ensure that we stay the course. Please wait for the moderator to call on you to speak, which is myself. Pre-submitted responses will be read at the end of the town hall meeting if there is time at the end of the hour. They will also be attached to the minutes when published and put on the website. And the last rule is please be respectful at all times of everyone's opinions when we discuss these matters. So apologies about omitting the ground rules, but I definitely wanted to make sure those are read for the record. Zach, do you have anything else that you would like to state to the committee, or anything else that you feel of value, sir? You are our lone citizen this evening, and so I see Dr. Zagardo, you got your hand up. Would you like to say something? Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, everybody. I'd like to welcome Zach and thank you for coming. And I'd like to, based on your question, I'd like to ask Chief a question. And also, Zach, I'd like to ask you a question if you feel comfortable asking. And I guess I'm supposed to identify myself. I'm Janice Zagardo, an at-large member of the committee. So, Chief, I think Zach raised an interesting point, and I'm curious, are there on the job description for this search, is there a requirement that the candidate come from the policing world? So that's the question for Chief. And Zach, later on, after Chief gets a chance to ask, you said that you participated in some of the protests last summer, and that I think you said that you noticed there's some problems in policing in Peoria. And I know you can only speak for yourself, but I mean, this committee is formed, and this meeting, the intention of this particular meeting is to hear from people. So if you feel comfortable sharing some of the things you heard, I mean, I, for one, would like to hear it. So I'll mute myself now and see what you guys say.
Yeah, if Zach's good, I can start with that, Janice, in reference to the first question. Traditionally, and I'll have to, I guess, self-admit that I haven't looked at the posting yet, because I don't even know if I, will be throwing my name in there. So I've been very busy here doing the job as it proceeds, and I haven't even had time to look at the actual posting. But what I will say is, traditionally, not only here or throughout most of this state, it's a commissioned appointment, meaning that you have to have a law enforcement background, and that I think what if Zach's alluding to, and I think he said he worked at CAD. If you look at CEOs and other positions like that in regular business, you do see some people that have that leadership or management background. They're able to bounce from a Caterpillar to an IBM or so forth. But when it comes to in policing, and I can only talk about Illinois specifically because that's where my background's from, but nationwide it's very similar. The Illinois Law Enforcement Standards Board is going to require a commission, and that goes to the background that you initially have to have at some point in your career, as starting as an officer at some point. So it would be a little bit out of the norm to have someone in a chief of police position that didn't have a law enforcement background. It would be some of an anomaly. I would almost have to assume that they would have to call it something else, as superintendent of public safety or something like that. But with the commission appointment and the standards board and training necessary, that's mandated by the state of Illinois, I wouldn't foresee that happening coming from outside of the law enforcement community. So hopefully that answered part of the question at least.
Thank you, Chief. And Zach, if you wanted to answer Dr. Zagardo's question about some of the things that you may have observed or some things that you might be, if you feel comfortable sharing, sir, it's up to you.
Sure, Zach Kraler. So a couple of things. There have been a few police shootings in the past several years in Peoria. I'm blanking on the names right now. But after reading through some of the final police reports and everything on that, it seems like there's while maybe the situation that ended up evolving did require use of force, it didn't really seem like that was a situation that should have evolved. And there was a lot of upsetment that there wasn't resolution, there wasn't any sort of accountability for the deaths that had occurred at the hand of police officers, where situations may have been escalated. And then there's also, cameras were not always on for these situations. And it seems to me if cameras aren't on, we should probably assume that the police did something wrong if they didn't turn a camera on. Additionally, what was the other thing? Yeah, and then there was just a general feeling that there were communities that were being over policed at a level that was not appropriate, especially as far as drug usage, because drug usage is pretty prevalent across both ends of our community, and it's hard to find people because you do it because you want to, and the guy giving you drugs wants you to. So I think there was some feeling that there was over enforcement of that in specific at-risk communities, especially among the Black population, and that doesn't seem appropriate. And that's a trend that's national, as well as local to Peoria. So I was hoping you guys too could give me a little more feedback on where the breakdown is currently between police and community relations, where the gaps are that people feel like they're not being protected or heard. Apparently they didn't come tonight, so I was hoping to hear a bunch of people that were upset with you guys that were sharing.
Thank you, sir. I mean, we definitely had better attendance last month, and we will be having our third installment next month, March 4th, I believe it is, or it's either March 4th or March 7th, excuse me. And so hopefully we'll have a better turnout. You can definitely bring some of your friends as well, too, because that's the purpose of why we're doing this. And if anybody from the committee would like to maybe address what he feels is maybe it's the breakdown, but I would just speak for myself personally. I feel like is we just miss engagement And I think that that is something that we're trying to propel with these town hall series, is just fostering engagement with our community, to engage with our committee, engage with, our police officers. We have Chief Theobald on this call. And I think that's just very important. So I think that's where it starts, and that's how you can address a lot of the issues that are existing if we could just have that engagement. So I think that's, in my opinion, that is a key breakdown. It's just the lack of engagement, because it seems like when the engagement happens, it's because of a negative situation, and we're reacting at that point versus having some proactive engagement where we can have these conversations, whether they are comfortable or uncomfortable conversations that maybe could address future incidents that could occur. Dr. Zagardo, did I see you got your thumb up? Go ahead, Dr. Zagardo.
Thanks, Andre. Zach, Chief might be able to answer this better than I can, but I remember attending a presentation about 2 or 3 years ago on a police survey, a survey that the police conducted of our community, and it was organized by zip codes. And it presented something I think that is also a national trend. As I was listening, you're hearing the same communities ask for more police presence and also less at the same time. So I think there's kind of a nationwide trend that, we don't want to be over policed, but we don't feel safe. So it was very interesting, and the police didn't address that, kind of confounding result directly, but you could definitely see it in the data that were presented at this presentation. And I don't know if anybody's ever asked the police about that or not, but it's something that really popped out to me, because we know, weapons of mass destruction. We know that the more police you put in a neighborhood, the more people are going to get arrested, and then you have the more opportunities for some bad results. But then you also hear the neighborhood saying, well, we want more police here to keep us safe. So I don't know the answer. I just know that we saw it in the data, and I don't know if Chief has any more information about that, or if you noticed that.
Yeah, thanks, Janet. Yeah, that data, I think that was a few years ago, if I recall, and I do recall seeing it. I wouldn't want to get into specifics without having it in front of me from, one zip code to another. But I think the point behind that is, and I think Zach alluded to it in one of his topics, in reference to over policing, I guess is the word to be said in certain regard. Most of what we do is crime driven, right? It's kind of like, I'm not going to say it's marketing, but if you look at, what time of day, geographically, what area, where do we have the calls? Where do we have the calls for service? What type of call, and what kind of response it takes to respond to an incident. Where's the violent crime, and where is the highest volume of it? And that sometimes does attract more police, because if part of our responsibility is to respond to incidents like that, I think everybody can still agree that that's part of our responsibility. The calls for service, especially when it comes to violent crime, the 911 calls, whatever it happens to be, and that's more centralized in one area than another. You're going to have more police presence by the nature of managing that situation. I don't think it would be to anybody's benefit, and I'm not, not blanketed, but just to say that we had higher crime rates somewhere else, and we only go in there when someone were to call too. I think that it's necessary to have a quick response to that, and you're going to, along with that, probably see more police cars. And then when you put more police in a certain area, you could end up with a higher volume of stops than an area that has half as many police. So Janet kind of hit it on the head, is like, which way do you go with that? But most of this stuff, and we don't do everything in reference to statistics, but we do have to manage our calls for service where the hot spots are at and try to address that. Because especially when it comes to responding to high priority calls, meaning, and generally those are violent in nature, you don't want to have a long response, because things can go bad, and they can go bad very quickly. And some of that has to do with just, and every city is a little bit different, how it's laid out, with the geography of it, how long response times are. But I would say generally, when it comes to the management of a police agency, everyone that I know of does that very similar. You put your people where they're needed, and you prioritize what they're needed for, and that has a lot to do with it. And then along with that comes sometimes the I don't want to say an accusation, but the presence of mind that, wow, look at all these cops that are in this particular neighborhood. And I guess that my counter question would be, if we weren't to have them there, that wouldn't be a good look either. And I don't think that's what the residents have alluded to in the past. That if you happen to live in a neighborhood where it's a higher volume of crime, I can't speak for every one of them, but for the most part, they want the police in that neighborhood. Everybody wants wherever you live, want the opportunity to be able to move around, be outside their house, and then have the criminal element hiding inside, as opposed to the other way around. And I think the police presence has some impact on that. That was a long answer, sorry.
No, you're fine. Thank you, Chief. I see that, Allison, you had your thumb raised.
So I'm not saying that, again, showing police presence is a wrong response, especially it depends on what type of crimes are in the hotspots. But I think, the issue at hand about how prevention is, because that's what you're necessarily doing, is preventing more crimes of that nature from happening when you're there. But the thing is just because police presence is there, you're going to assume that people are going to be afraid because of the police are there. And that's one of the issues at hand that a lot of people have in the community, just from speaking with them. And again, at protests, hearing what people have to say, police being present shouldn't be a fear. It should be feeling of safety. And again, it's not like everyone is always going to be afraid or always going to feel safe. And I think that's the way that we need to change, is how we do prevention. Again, for drugs, we had the DARE program. Not sure if Peoria has it anymore, but from back where I was from before I moved here and lived here for 5 years now too, it's the type of prevention that needs to be changed and taught. It shouldn't be just because a police officer drives around or sits in your parking lot of your home, meaning like the Taft homes, Harrison homes, and just sitting there and watching. Again, some people might feel safe, some people might feel afraid. Again, you need to see how the engagement is being seen. And it's good to hear that there was surveys. But again, it depends on zip codes. Because if you keep targeting the same zip codes in the same area in the same manner, no perception is going to change. And that's the issue, is a lot of people are upset because nothing is changing. And I think the way that combating these type of crimes needs to be seen differently. Just like when you have the use of force chart, I feel like the way that you respond to different things that should be changed as well. Okay, so how am I going to respond to this type of call? Just because in these type of scenarios, this could happen. So again, it's all comes down to how you teach the prevention and what kind of prevention, because you can think that you're giving a message of, I'm trying to stop crime from happening, I'm trying to keep the community safe. And then on the other hand, you have people who are going to feel like they're just watching us, they're just waiting for us to mess up, they're going to pull us over no matter what. They assume because I live here, I'm a criminal, so they're going to keep an eye on me. Again, that's just something I feel like we need to figure out. The prevention of crimes needs to be changed altogether, because again, not everyone feels the same way when they see the police. Sorry for that being long as well.
Thank you, Allison, for your context and feedback on there. Appreciate it. Any other comments, or Zach, do you have anything else that you would like to say to the committee, or does any of the committee members have anything for the good of the discussion?
Shalandra had her hand up. I don't know if she still wants to keep it up. I saw a thumbs up. I don't know if that was a comment or an indication she wanted to.
I did. At first I had the raised hand up. I think that might have been the wrong option. This goes back to a couple of comments ago when Chief mentioned that it's preferred that the person be of law enforcement background. I wanted to ask a follow-up question to that. Is that specifically a police officer background, or is that just law enforcement in general? Because there's different people who can be defined as law enforcement who could possibly qualify. So I just wanted to follow up with that question.
Yeah, thanks. That's actually a pretty good question. So the state of Illinois does have some requirements in reference to who could be commissioned, but I guess I do know, and I can't remember where it was at, but I do know that there have been in the past, I believe, some federal agents, meaning having law enforcement background in the federal area, that have then been able to be commissioned as a police chief. So like, you know, like a retired, and I just can't recall where it was at, but I think it's possible. They just have to go through a certain transition training or certification or something to be able to be accredited that way. You know, I'm just using an example, like a retired FBI agent then becomes a city police chief somewhere. I think that's possible. I don't know what, you know, the steps would be for that to take. I think more commonly you'd have you could also have someone like someone that was maybe a command person in the Illinois State Police, then move over to be a police chief in a municipality. They retire or move out of their role in the Illinois State Police, different agency, and then move over to be a police chief. So you know, that does happen a lot more frequently, but there is kind of a baseline of training and standards that and that have been in place for a while that are required to be a commissioned police chief. So I hope that answered your question. I know it kind of.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that cleared it up. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Great question. Thank you for the response, Chief. Any other feedback before I ask Christina if we have any pre-submitted statements for our town hall series meeting? Does anybody else have anything that they would like to say? Zach, if you have anything else, please feel free, or anything from the committee at this time.
This is Zach. I just wanted to say thanks for having this, and I appreciate the chance to hear from you guys some and find out what's going on a little bit.
Sure,
All right.
anytime. Anytime, sir. And the good thing is although you were our lone participant tonight, you were able to engage with us. You were able to engage with Chief Theobald, and you can spread the gospel that this exists and that we want to hear from other citizens and that this is a vessel for them. So please be a good marketer of your experience tonight. Dr. Zagardo?
Thanks, Andre. Zach, I want to follow up with Chief on that one question you had about the cameras not being turned on. I remember back when they were introducing, I went to some sessions at the police department when we were investigating cameras. And I remember asking the chief at the time, which was like 2 or 3 chiefs ago, how would an officer turn their camera on, and what would be the indicator to them to remember? And they said, I said, is the dispatcher going to remind you to turn your camera on? Is anybody going to remind the officer to turn the camera on? Because it's a manual situation. I think I think there's certain number of seconds, maybe 30 seconds or a minute or some number of seconds that is recaptured before the officer turns the camera on. But the chief at the time just said, oh, it'll be a disciplinary issue if certain officers are found not turning their cameras on, repeatedly. So do you have a policy, and is there any way to get the dispatcher, when the officer is going to the call, to remind the officer to turn the camera on? Or are there any policies in place now that we know sometimes cameras aren't turned on? I can imagine in the heat of the moment, things get crazy. I mean, I don't want to, assume malicious intent, but it could be either way.
Yeah, sure. Twofold. Let me add, I think Zach was alluding to some incidents that happen, kind of a wide range of timeframes here. And there was a process. Remember, we haven't had body cameras forever. And if you go back more than a couple years ago, there was a pilot program where a certain amount of our officers had them, but then most of them didn't, right? We were testing to see which one we were going to have. We were in the process of getting that. Now, for the last 2 years, maybe 2.5, I lose track of my months here, but all of our officers have them, okay? So there has to be a timeline included on, well, the officer didn't have his camera on. Well, it depends on how long or years you're going back based on an incident, because there's a good chance that we didn't have cameras at all then, or there was only a few that happened to be testing them. And if those weren't there, then they weren't obviously turned on because nobody had them. So these are still relatively new and, relative to our department. I think we're ahead of the game in reference to we're a large department that has them. And I think, there's still some departments out there, I don't know if our size, but that don't. I think that's going to be probably a requirement here pretty shortly for everybody. So we're already there on that end of it. So kind of going back to answering Zach's question, there is a possibility that incidents have occurred 2-3 years ago where there wasn't body camera footage, just because the officers didn't have the body cameras. Janice, in reference to your question or comment, yes, we do have a policy in place and requirements of when they're to be turned on. And I'll say that initially, like any new technology, like we're all using, we've learned in the last year how to use all the Zooms and team stuff. The first time or first couple times you do it, it takes you a while to remember which button to hit. And Andre reminded me earlier that my mute button was on. And I'm in those meetings every day. And that will occasionally occur. If an officer, they have to turn these things on because it's not a camera problem. It's a storage problem right now, right? You have to store the data. And there's only so much storage, it costs money, all those things. So the officers aren't generally driving around on an 8 or 10 hour shift all day recording absolutely everything when certain portion of it's their calls, and other times it could be just them sitting in their car writing a report. So they have to remember to turn those on when they're en route to a call or when they get to a call, and then notify somebody, the persons that they're talking to, if possible, that the camera's on. And that's important. But I think the patrol officers that use them day in and day out quickly learn kind of the muscle memory behind that of, I'm going to the call. The first thing I do is, I put my car in gear. I go here, and then I'm getting out of my car. I flip the button. I take the seatbelt off. I flip the button. I go do my call. And day in and day out, we just see body camera after body camera footage, and some of that footage is required to keep for a certain amount of time, and other stuff, if it's not relevant to a case or an incident, it eventually gets dumped. But they record a lot, and there's storage involved in that. So Janice, I think part of it is, how do they remember to do it? I think it's just like anything else you get in the nature of doing. When we have this job that we're doing 8 or 10 hours a day, and it just becomes part of what you're doing, and they get used to it, I guess, is a simple thing. Now, on occasion, incidents can happen really quickly where you don't expect them, where maybe you're just, walking to get a cup of coffee, and then you're right in the middle of something for some reason, and things, can go sideways in a hurry. That's the good part about the delay that Janice had mentioned, is at some point in that time, if you're able to get that camera still on, it'll retrace the steps and still allow for that video that was 30 seconds before. If that makes sense. So that is a good built-in quality of the camera that we happen to have. So I'm not the technology guru here when it comes to these things, but I have sat through a lot of the meetings and when we went through the process of getting them. So I know more about body cameras than I ever thought I would. So.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions, comments, concerns that anybody would like to state before we see if there are any submitted statements? All right. Christina, were there any pre-submitted statements for tonight's meeting?
No, I did not receive any.
You did not receive any? Okay, thank you. Thank you. For the record, citizens are able to pre-submit statements to be read if they are not able to be in attendance, or if they would just prefer their statement to be read if they don't want to verbalize them themselves. So that is just something that they have the ability to do, and something to keep in mind for next time. I do want to say thank you. I believe Monica Gordon is on the Zoom under the WMBD/WYZZ Zoom handle. So thank you for attending tonight's virtual town hall meeting. Thank you to you, Zach, for attending as well. We appreciate your civic engagement in these important discussions, which are very important. Please go tell your friends on social media, TikTok, Nextdoor, wherever you engage with people at, please tell them about this, because the purpose of this committee is to engage with the community, and that's why we're doing these. But I know, today it's snowy outside. I know there's a mayoral candidate forum going on right now. A lot of people are probably watching that. And so I get it, but we'll continue to keep priming the pump, and we'll continue to keep being available to the community. I think that's our biggest thing, and that's our best ability, is we have to be available to the community. So with that being said, I would like to seek a motion to adjourn tonight's virtual town hall series meeting.
I move.
So moved by Ms. King.
I second it.
So we have a tie for second between Megan and Karen J. Wilson, so they'll have to fight it out. No, it's all good. So we've been properly second. I'm going to go ahead and conduct roll real fast, and if you, for the record, can just tell me your motion, please. Shalandra Birch.
Yeah.
Allison Galvin,
Yes.
Nina Gugis,
Yes.
Miss Lorraine King,
Yes.
Miss Sharon Kramer,
Yes.
Miss Megan Nguyen,
Yes.
Chief Doug Theobald,
Yes.
Miss Karen J. Wilson,
Yes.
Dr. Janice Zagardo,
Yes.
and Andre Allen, yes. So we are properly adjourned. Thank you all so much. Committee, we will see you all next Thursday for our monthly scheduled meeting. And everyone be safe out there if you are commuting home. And if you're at home, stay underneath those covers. We'll see you next time.